of 35 people. And I thought, we'll find somebody that's going to help us in the first 5. No. First 10. No. First 15. No. It was call 16. And that person dropped everything they were doing to help us.
Wow.
And so I think about the persistence that you have to have. And even then, at that point, we had only raised $250,000, and that was from family.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. We have a great episode for you guys today. I have with me on the show Angel and Jason Williams, a 1-2 powerhouse couple who invest in real estate, co-founders of the Academy. They do Real Estate Investing Rocks, a summit that helps people learn about the different facets of real estate and makes it accessible for the average learner. So if you could help welcome me onto the show, Jason and Angel.
How was welcoming us?
So how are you guys doing today?
We're doing pretty good.
Pretty well.
That's
How
good.
are you doing?
That's good. You know what I love about you guys is you guys have very radically different personalities, right? So obviously Angel is on the far spectrum of extrovert. Jason, I can tell already that you're an introvert. I'm kind of like borderline. I'm right in the middle. So I can identify introvert, extrovert. How did you guys meet? How long have you guys been married, and how long have you been together?
Let's see. We met in 2001, and I guess I moved to Lubbock because Jason was getting his doctorate at Tech in 2003, and then we got married in 2006.
Wow. Awesome. So were you guys both investing in real estate separately before you kind of got married, or how did the love for real estate kind of journey start once you got married?
Yeah, well, my grandparents raised me, and they were investing in residential real estate. They got into it late 70s, early 80s when, we think what's going on right now is bad.
Right.
In the late 70s, early 80s, like the federal funds rate hit 20% in 1981.
Yep.
So they were getting loans in double digits. And that was the norm. And I mean, the pricing was a little bit different, but they were still getting involved in it. And like, I think about my grandpa who worked super hard for C's, and my grandma who had to get a GED because she only made it through 8th grade because she would have to go and pick cotton with her family because they were migrant farmers.
Yeah.
So it's knowing that they got into it and were able to be successful with it. I never saw that as something outside the norm.
Got it.
And then Jason, you want to talk about what your dad did?
Yeah, my parents got into real estate when I was in high school, hard and heavy.
Okay.
So I've helped him like maintain lawns and do turns and stuff like that when I was in high school. And so I always knew I would be getting into real estate. So I was in college and grad school when Angel moved to Lubbock, and we ended up buying our first house in 2003 that we knew would eventually be a rental. And so that's when we sort of started our journey. So
you guys already met knowing and aligned that, hey, real estate was going to be a thing.
Well, so that's kind of the funny story. So we get this house in 2003, and I'm a little older than Jason. So I was like 25. He was 23, I think. Maybe it was 24 and 26. Doesn't really matter. But when he got the job in Wichita Falls, we never discussed selling the house. We never discussed renting the house. We just started looking for someone to do the make ready. And like, we've talked about this several times. We're like, did we ever talk about it? Because neither one of us ever remembers discussing what are we going to do with this house when we move.
Yeah.
We just started, it's like we never talked about it or anything. We just started getting it ready to be a rental. And
so you already had it. It was never what I find with most couples is that one person has a love for real estate or a desire to get in, and the other one is very afraid. And one couple is dragging the other. So you guys just, it was like, oh, it's just what we do. This is kind of how we're rolling.
It was just kind of weird now that I look back on it. Cause I mean, now that we're in, we do residential and we do multifamily, there are plenty of times when I feel a draw to residential just because it's kind of my safety zone. That's what we've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah.
I feel safe there. I don't know multifamily as well. We've only been in it for 5 years. And so sometimes I feel like Jason is kind of the multifamily guy, and I find myself kind of gravitating toward residential. But we're still not that different, and I'll do multifamily too. It doesn't bother me. I just don't. It doesn't have that same like welcome home feeling that you get over in residential.
Yeah, no, understood. How do you guys kind of like get on the same page and say, hey, this is what our goals are, and you may say you want a single family. He might. I know you guys dabble in a bunch of assets. We're going to talk about that a little bit coming up, but how do you guys make like, okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do for this year. This is our target or our goal for this year. Do you guys
I think
set goals
honestly,
together?
This last investment that we're looking at is it's a 10 property portfolio of duplexes, so it's 20 duplexes, and this is one that like we want to do. We're doing it as a family, so it's Jason and I, his sister Sarah, her husband, and then Jason's mom because his dad has passed away, and we're looking at making this purchase together. And I had a real mindset shift that had to happen because I'm looking at it, and now I learned the 1% rule. I learned all those things from Jason's dad. And so I'm sitting there and thinking about all these things and how to make it work. And in my mind, the first thing I'm thinking is based on the tax value, each one of these units is $123,600. 1% rule says they should be making $1,260 per unit in rent. We've got 14 non-performing units. And that was just the first thing. And then like Jason and I are talking, and Jason, did you really have to like convince me, or was I able to come to it on my own? I don't really remember.
You took convincing.
Okay.
So Jason, you're the underwriter. Like, how did you set out to underwrite that and say, hey, this is what we could do, or this is what we could perform to make this a performing asset in the long term, right?
Yeah. So this particular deal that she's talking about, I would never syndicate it. Wouldn't make sense to syndicate it. If it was like 10 times bigger and the numbers were the same, it wouldn't make sense. But as a JV, it makes more sense. Just based on the numbers, it would require a whole lot of guesswork that I'm not comfortable with to make it a successful syndication. But I went in with some other ideas for the property where we would be helping with some tax issues that we're facing. And also Angel and I both like long-term holds, even though with syndications, they typically aren't. And so I was going in expecting to have this property for 20, 30, 40 years, maybe indefinitely, pass it down to the kids and stuff like that. So when I'm thinking about things like that, I think of the ROI differently.
Okay.
And I think that's what Angel was getting caught up on, is rather than a store of value for the wealth, generational wealth. So.
And that's good. It's good to understand kind of the exit strategy. So I know you guys are tapping on that a little bit. So Jason, if you don't mind me asking, just like for the exit strategy, your exit strategy, I know you talked about doing the deal versus syndication versus JV, and kind of underwriting both of those examples to say, hey, numbers don't really work as a syndication. And for those who are listening, syndication, just group investing, you have LPs raising certain capital, giving a certain amount back to your limited partner investors, versus just joint venturing it. You have a group of partners that are all coming in equally invested, or depending on what percentage you guys want to split it at, and you're coming together and you're kind of all owning it together at the same time. Yep. What was the kind of the exit strategy, and I think you talked to it a little bit, just that made this deal work for you? Is it just the lifetime that you talked to the tax benefits or the long term?
The initial tax benefits we'd be getting, but then just long-term hold benefits where we can refinance every few years, get our original capital back, lets us redeploy it. We don't have to split it 70, 30, 80-20 split with investors.
Yep.
So that's one benefit of JV, is we have like control of 100% of it, not just a small portion.
Right.
And so if that's the case, we would get our investment back. All of our residential stuff have infinite returns, so this would eventually have infinite returns as well. And so that's really the exit strategy, is get our capital back, let us redeploy it, and then have it a cash flowing asset with virtually no money in it. So
And it sounds like it's a legacy asset for your family to pass down. I know you guys are both parents of 4 kids, so yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and the goals of this investment were a little different too, which also took a little bit for me to get used to, because in the past, it's been this golden era, right, where everything appreciated, everything made money hand over fist, and this isn't that type of investment.
Correct.
This is really the first goal of it, and the first play of it is to be a tax mitigation tool. Yep. So this investment will allow us to mitigate over $500,000 in taxes amongst the people in the group.
Got it. Yeah.
So that was a plus. And like he was saying, it's more of a store of value. Like, get the money out of your freaking account, put it somewhere, let it increase and decrease in nominal terms so that you aren't spending that bad boy.
Yep.
Put the money somewhere else. And so it stores the value.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily a wealth creator so much as a wealth maintainer.
Yeah.
And so that was,
it's legacy. I definitely see it as that.
A lot of change. It was just like,
You bring up a really good point, because I think, like, from like 2019 to like maybe 2022, everybody's been acceleration. The market's just appreciated so fast, and people jumped on the wagon of just appreciation. With the fact that you guys are in so many different asset classes, how do you determine, right? I know you guys have, single family, multifamily, storage units, RVs, mobile parks. How do you determine like cash flow versus appreciation, and what deals make sense for the exit strategy that you want, right? Like, so if you want a cash flow, Jason, like, how do you determine from an underwriting standpoint what asset class you guys may select for the next kind of what you want to achieve?
Cash flow is oil and gas all day long.
So we're not involved actively in self-storage or mobile home parks, RV parks. We have looked at a few, but we couldn't make the number, we've been almost under contract, but it fell through. So mainly our real estate assets are multifamily and residential. But I have a model that I created where I have metrics that I require for my investors. And if I don't even hit those for my investors, I don't even move forward with it.
Yeah.
If I do hit those, or at least get close, I can usually massage the numbers so that we can get them, whether it's changing the CapEx budget or maybe adjusting the rents or something like that, where we can start making the deal work.
Yeah.
But that's what I look for, is if I can't hit those metrics, like, all right, we can't hit these metrics as a syndication. Well, what other strategies can we use? So.
Yeah, no, that's good. And what are the metrics that you typically look at for, hey, this deal's got to work on an IRR standpoint, or what are your kind of cash on cash return? What are the kind of metrics that you say, hey, they got to make? I kind of feel the same way, but just for our audience.
I get red flags if the IRR is less than 16. 16 is like the bare minimum that our investors will take.
Understood.
Ideally, we want 18 plus, but I've been told my underwriting is conservative by lenders and fund managers. And so when they come to me and see a 16, they think that may be a little too conservative. And so they may be getting something more. Cash on cash, we look for 8%. Equity multiple, I flag it less than 1.8, but again, we want 2 plus. And the AAR, that needs to be, it flags it at 20, but we need that 25, 30.
No, understood. And Angel, you talked a little bit to oil and gas. What do you think the oil and gas play is? I think a lot of people don't even think oil and gas as a syndication option, right? So
you can absolutely syndicate them. Where the one we're in personally is a JV. And then there's a family limited partnership that Jason is a part of, that the family owns actual like oil in the ground on a ranch. But it's, I don't know anything else that's doing 80%. Like, it's just insane.
Yeah.
We put in like 135 and we steady are getting money back. Last year, what did we get? 23?
I don't remember.
I think it was like 23. And I mean, I don't have anything else cash flowing like that, or we just don't. The hardest part about it is you don't get like the depreciation. But oil and gas also has a different play against active income. Mm-hmm. So there's a percentage of oil and gas that can go against your active income, even if you're not like an oil and gas person or you're not a real estate professional. I don't remember how it works, but just that it does.
Yeah. No, that's something that's like, it's funny now that I've gotten more into the syndication space, talking about car washes and all sorts of different options of syndication. So it's always interesting to hear about new ones and new ways based upon what your end goal is. Hey, if I want cash flow, if I want appreciation, if I want to write off more of my active income, if I don't care about the write-off, I just want this kind of, continue to build for retirement. I mean, it's pretty much, I feel like, a syndication for every possible deal out there.
Yeah, well, and like anything can be syndicated. My friends just bought into a pro soccer team. It's being syndicated. And I learned something cool about gas stations and car washes a couple of weeks ago. For a gas station, if fuel cells are more than inside convenience cells, the entire thing is depreciated on a 15-year.
Oh, wow.
The building and everything.
Wow.
And then the car wash is a 15-year bucket, everything too.
Wow.
So, yeah. So they, even on straight line, you're still going to depreciate to zero in 15 years.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Now you guys have the Academy, which is the Academy Presents, which is kind of your group, but you have this summit that you guys do. Is it yearly or is it bi-yearly?
We do it twice a year. We do it in March and in September, and I want to say it's like we kind of plan it around the third solid weekend, but we've moved to a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday format. Not because I'm trying to rule out people that are trying to do this hustle on the side with the W-2, but because that way we have a VA for all 3 days. So it makes it a little bit more manageable.
Understood.
Because it's grown a lot. When we started, it was in March of 2020, there were 24 speakers.
Yeah.
And now we're at like 50 to 60 speakers. We have panels, we have master classes, round table. It's grown a lot.
It's beautiful. I know. I've definitely seen it. I've seen a lot of the people that I follow and people that I've met at different conferences that are part of it. How do you guys? And I think that's the beauty why you guys have access to so much knowledge of the different types of syndications and different type of real estate investing strategies. Because you have everybody in all facets that come on the show. How do you guys start building and so there's a networking, and I don't know, Jason, if it's you leave that to Angel or but how do you guys even work on
Angel knows everybody.
She does. I will say that. How do you guys do that? Like, so how have you slowly built? I know Angel, you're an educator. I know Jason, you're a former engineer, PhD. How do you guys work on like really just continuing to build a network so that you have access to bring these kind of really vetted professionals, real estate professionals on the show or on the summit?
I'm not going to say I haven't messed up. I have. There are people that have been a part of the summit that I now distance myself from because guess what? We all mess up sometimes. And maybe you don't read everybody the way you should. And that's okay. Just because you've had them at an event or you've had them on your show doesn't mean that you're like full on endorsing them. I mean, it feels that way, but once you start distancing, people see the distance too. And if they get to know you, you can speak on it if they ask you about it. But one of the things Jason and I really have done is we really figured out what our superpowers are and we dove into the superpowers. Now, when we were getting started, we had to do a lot more than we do now because we've got a pretty solid team now. But there have been times where I didn't underwrite. I tried to underwrite one day. It was horrendous. I spent like 18 hours on it and didn't ever really even get into the spreadsheets. It sucked. So that is not my thing. Jason does all the underwriting, but there's times when like both of us are reaching out to brokers. I tend to focus on especially the new relationships because Jason being an introvert, he's solid in established relationships.
Yeah.
And he can do really well with those. And so when we're raising money, it's really both of us.
Yeah.
It's not one of us over the other. It's both of us together.
I love that. I love that you guys have kind of determined what your roles are. How long did it take you to kind of figure out, okay, you know what, this is my superpower. Let me just go focus on this. I mean, I'm sure that also accelerated the business of just understanding what roles you guys both play. And
I think
you have a family as well, right? So you've got to manage and juggle that, right? So
yeah. But I think really it was when we first got with our coach had to send out 2 questions to 5 people. It was, what is this person what is this person the best at, and what is this person's natural talent? I think those were the 2 questions. And I sent it out to 10 people thinking 5 people would respond, and 7 people emailed back and said, I will talk to anybody, I will build an instant friendship, and half the time I have that person doing something for me by the end of the night. And I was like, what? That's insane. That's not for real. And it's not so much that I have them doing something for me, but it's that I'm really good at talking to people and meeting people. And then we kind of discovered over time that I have a really good memory.
yeah.
And so I think your average person has, a couple hundred people in their head, and I probably have at least 1,000.
That's real. And it's funny because I think you remembered me, and I was like, I mean, you stand out. So your personality, it lights up a room. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to remember you, but yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Jason, I know you focus mostly on the underwriting. That's kind of your sweet spot. How did were you already doing that? I know you've got a PhD background, you're engineering, your numbers. I'm an engineer as well. So I like numbers. I'm not an I do underwrite, but I don't love it, right? I'm more strategy, asset management, so how did you kind of hone into your sweet spot? Because I know you teach it as well, right? So
yeah, I do teach it. So it started off, like you said, I'm an engineer. I was an R&D engineer, so I was playing with Excel, writing my own macros for 16 years before I even started this. And really, it's just creating foolproof systems in these Excel sheets so that anybody can use them. And I just took that into underwriting. I started getting every single spreadsheet I could get a hold of, and I took bits and pieces out of each one. I fixed most of the ones that I found because they were all broken in some way, and I made sure that they weren't broken in mine. And I built my model up from that, basically from scratch, and now implementing or running the numbers. Once you get proficient at it, you can underwrite a whole deal in less than an hour, like from solid business plan, your CapEx, everything, importing the rent roll in T12. So a lot of times when you're messing with some other guru's spreadsheet, you're spending hours just trying to decipher the rent roll in T12 and put it into your other spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But mine does that automatically for you. So, I mean, sometimes it takes a while just to clean up the formatting because you get weird formats from brokers and sellers, but that's the longest part of it. And like I said, I just create the systems to do it the most efficiently way possible, and that just lets me do more.
Yeah, no, understood.
Well, and I'll say this too, like for the networking piece of it, like COVID was probably the best thing that ever happened to the real estate investing space, especially multifamily, because everything went virtual. So every meetup I went to for 2 years, I was pimping Jason's underwriting out. And I was like, hey, my husband will help you with your underwriting. Just send him this email and make sure you put in the subject line, Angel sent me. And so we got tons and tons of underwriting and spreadsheets and examples that way.
That's good.
And it got Jason's name out there too.
Yeah.
So his name was out there. He was actually having conversations with people and explaining the underwriting and looking at their numbers and getting all these other programs and spreadsheets too. So that's kind of how we make it work too. Even in face-to-face meetups, it'll be, maybe he doesn't want to start the small talk up, so I'll start the small talk up, and if it gravitates towards numbers, I'm out, and Jason takes over.
Right, he runs the show. I like how you I think honing in on niching down on your specialty and using that as a connection point to, okay, hey, what do other people in this space need and have problems with? that may be kind of, because I was going to ask you, what would you, if somebody was just starting out, what would you, in this space, they really need to build the connections, they really need to build getting to understand the different spaces, what would you advise them? But I think you have one point there, which is if you can understand and you find your sweet spot, that's something that you can offer, and it builds a connection point with other people in the space. What would you say outside of that, some other ways that if you had to give advice to someone just kind of starting out, the best way to kind of start meeting people and kind of expanding their network so they can start learning and growing?
So I always tell people when I meet them to go to Angel's Monday meetups. And I'll send them a link. It's free. It's 11 o'clock Central every Monday.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool seeing these people who come to me and I send them a meetup, and now they're all over the place. So
yeah, that's real. Definitely meetups is definitely one that I think is good, finding that space. And now, like you said, Angel, there's so much that's now online. You don't have to necessarily be in the same state with people. I almost feel like that's a positive that, hey, I get to meet these operators across different, spaces, within the nation, and sometimes possibly internationally, right? Because, I've met some people that are investing in the U.S. market, but they're out of the country. So I definitely think that's a good one.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and we actually had a new guy show up today, and he thinks he wants to do acquisitions. I'm like, well, I don't really know someone that really specializes in acquisitions, but I'll keep my ears out.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, Edmund Chen was in our breakout room. I'm like, but if you want to talk to somebody about capital raising, this is the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah.
Because he coaches capital raising, and so that's a really good connection, because as you know, any program you get into, they've all got their ups and downs.
For sure.
But if you're willing to put in the work, you're going to pretty much be successful wherever you go. But you have to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
Because there's ones that I prefer over other ones, but I'm not going to say that to somebody because I don't know where they're going to,
what their end goal is, what they want to achieve.
And I don't know who they're going to click with. And so I don't want to bias them. I try really hard. I have like zero poker face, so I try really hard to not bias people. But
no, I think you said a couple things there. I think number one is, as you're joining meetups, as you're joining these networking groups, is number one, making your voice heard as far as what you want, right? So that people have in mind what you're trying to find. So that's critically important. And I think the second one that you kind of tapped on is just understanding which groups most align to my core values, or align to, the personality type that I have, or align to what I'm trying to achieve. And that takes time, right? Like you've got to do your work in analyzing. And I know even for me, deciding on what groups that I wanted to be a part of, it was very much so like, yeah, I could achieve both in multiple groups of what I wanted to achieve, but there were certain groups that I just felt that connection to more so than others.
Yeah, and my other thing too is like, if I'm paying for a program, I want the main guy's cell phone number. If I'm paying for so-and-so's program, I want so-and-so's contact info. I want to be able to call that person.
That's good.
And so it's a little more expensive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're working with that person. And I mean, we've spent well over 6 figures in coaching.
Yeah.
But
understood.
Our net worth is tripled.
Yeah.
So, I have to assume those are correlated, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another nugget right there, is just, don't be afraid to get coaching, and don't be afraid to, you kind of got to invest, right? There's the importance of investing in yourself. I love that your platform makes it easy, and it's not as like a huge cost burden to at least get started and understanding, the different elements. But each and every person that really comes into your summit probably has, different classes and subsegments, but you give them a platform to kind of speak about their spaces. And obviously everyone should do their research. Hey, make sure you do your own due diligence, right? We have these guys coming on talking about different spaces we believe that they know about, but still do your due diligence and figure out if this is a community you want to be a part of. So
And just because something's high priced doesn't mean it's amazing. And just because something's low priced doesn't mean that it's crap.
Correct.
Because I know there's some people right now that have spoken to us and said, because ours right now is $34 a month for the subscription, and you get access to like 400 hours of content, or over 400 now. So people are like, oh, that must be trash. And it's not. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But having been an educator for so long, I have a really hard time charging for help. I just like helping people,
right,
and sharing knowledge. And so people get on to me all the time about not valuing my worth correctly.
And I get it, because I'm kind of in that same, I'm a giver too. And so that gets me into trouble at times as well. But while it's at a low price, people should definitely chime in to the REI Summit, REI Rocks. And so I'll give you an opportunity to share some of that information as well. So if this would not be Lessons into Blessings if we didn't end the show on, and the premise of the show is, our goal is to get people off the fence of fear, really jumping in and trying to achieve their financial goals. So that's why we have people come on, tell their story. It's never perfect, right? There's failure points that we have along the way. But I believe if we have the opportunity to turn those lessons that we have, the failure points, the mistakes or the trip ups, that it always turns into a blessing, right? Always, if you really can see it and pull the lessons out of it. So what would you guys say is, as a couple, the biggest lessons you've learned along the journey of real estate that now serve you? Whether it's like, I messed up once, I'll never do it again. Lessons you've learned that's like, yeah, this has helped us transform the way we do business and transform the way we do real estate.
Wow. So we've got a special needs son, and we got his diagnosis when he was 19 months old. And there were days when I would be on the phone with insurance for 8 hours for, days in a row, weeks in a row. And I really believe that persistence translated over into our first deal, because our first deal was a wild ride. I kind of look back on it, and there were times when Jason and I probably shouldn't have made it through. On that first deal, I got really bad into drinking because everything was going wrong. We had gone through like 14 loan vehicles. None of them were working. The very first team imploded before we even had our LOI in.
Wow.
The second team imploded after like the 14th loan product that didn't go through. And Jason came home from work that day, or I guess it was the next day after the team imploded. And he said, I'm just so glad that you're still in bed asleep and you're not drunk. And we sat down and made a list of 35 people. And I thought, we'll find somebody that's going to help us in the first 5. No. First 10. No. First 15. No. It was call 16. And that person dropped everything they were doing to help us.
Wow.
And so I think about the persistence that you have to have. And even then, at that point, we had only raised $250,000, and that was from family. And the $100,000 that we had that had gone hard day one, we borrowed that money from Jason's mom. I mean, like, this deal had to go through.
Yeah.
So just the persistence that we learned from our special needs son, and then what we learned from that first deal. And we did finally get it across the finish line.
Yeah.
2 extensions. We paid an extra $10,000 for a weekend. But we just need 3 days. We'll pay you $10,000 here. Just make sure it goes towards the purchase price.
Right.
But that second deal, we didn't ask for any extensions. We just closed.
Yeah.
So I think about how hard the first deal was and how drastically different the second deal was.
Yeah.
And it was a lot that we learned in the first deal.
Yeah.
So we also had a property management company in there dissolve. So we had to go through that. But the first year of that first deal was just insane.
Yeah. No, that's good. So obviously persistence, I mean, just continue to take your shots, continue to take swings. Eventually you're going to hit. Any things that you do differently now because of the first deal, like with partnerships or with property management teams that, you're like, yep, because of what we learned on that first deal, we would advise not doing this or not doing that.
Make sure all of your team members are invested in the property. not necessarily at equal amounts, but they all need to be somewhat invested in it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That was one of the reasons why that first team fell through, is they weren't planning on investing anything, and so that kicked out a lot of our people that we were wanting to bring in that would help us.
Yeah,
and they're like, if they're not investing anything, then no, they're not fully vested in it, and that's and they had W-2 still, and so it's like they can't devote the time, and they don't even have a desire or need to, because they don't have anything in it.
Yeah,
but they wanted 80% of the deal, and it was our deal.
Yeah, wow.
We found it, and that's kind of another one that you're going to hear in a lot of programs, that you have to have someone on your team to be like the main sponsor that has all this experience. And once we brought our friend Frank Pedalano onto the deal, between the three of us, the bridge lender said we had the experience. So we are actually the lead sponsors of our own first deal.
Wow.
So that's a whole different learning curve.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, after we got that first deal closed, so many people called and told me, hey, I want to be on your team. I want to help raise money for you, because that deal should have never closed. So we earned a lot of street creds on that first deal. It was tough. It was really tough. And you learn too that just because someone's giving you lip service as to what they feel like is important, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So someone may be like, oh yes, I absolutely put my investors first, or I put the residents first. But at the end of the day, when you keep hearing, hey, when are we going to get that asset management fee? Hey, when are we going to do this? Hey, when are we going to do this? And you start realizing that maybe they're not as investor or resident focused as the lip service was paid and pretended to be.
Right.
That can change things too.
Yep.
And so as you do more and more deals, your teams are going to change up anyway.
Yep.
Because it's a timing thing too.
Yep, for sure.
The timing doesn't always work out. But some people also fail to understand that it's not just the GP team. It's also your insurance broker. It's your lender. If you're using a broker lender, so you're using someone like, say, Old Capital, or you're deciding to go with someone local, like all of those people are on your team.
Yes.
The broker is on your team. So like the person that's helping you find properties, all of those people are on your team. Now, whether or not they're decision makers for the specific property, now that's different.
Yeah.
But like your lender is your biggest partner. They're supplying, 70, 60, 70, maybe even 75% of the money for the deal.
For sure.
So you have to consider those things too. And you may work with one lender for one deal and decide that was the most horrible experience ever. And so you don't work with them anymore.
Yeah.
But you're not going to know those things until you do the deal, because some people's true value system doesn't show.
Doesn't come out until you start seeing Is there any way that you would suggest that people, and so I'm completely 100 with that, like understanding your team, understanding the people you're doing, and not just your GP team, but your bench, right? Like these are people, your tax, your legal, your brokers, being able to vet them. Is there any way, and I know absolutely sometimes you don't know, people are really good with sheep's clothing, so you don't really know until you really get in. Is there any way that you found is a good way to vet your bench or vet your team, or has it been kind of,
so the longer that you're in the space, the more people you're going to meet, and there is a few of us that we will bounce questions off one another, like, hey, do you know so and so? And if I don't know that person, maybe I text a couple of different friends. Mm-hmm. And so there's a group of us that are looking out for one another.
Yeah.
I personally kind of love reconning people, because when I find some little piece of dirt, I'm like, yes. Not because I think it's fun to find dirt.
No, understood. But now that I can help. I
can self-select away.
Right. And I can help arm other people, if need be, right? With, if they need that information.
Well, and I work really hard too. Like if I found a TREC case on someone, or I found something from a legal website, or I found an archived something or other that says, hey, this person did XYZ in the late 90s. Like those are things that I think people should know. And I like to have the actual websites and the documentation so that someone isn't just thinking, oh, well, Angel just doesn't like them. Well, no, here's the court case. Exactly. Look on page 5. There's the facts.
Yep.
And so that tends to carry some weight too. But my friend and I, we both got into this really bad deal with someone that you think is amazing. They look beautiful on socials.
Right.
And some people have come back to both of us and been like, man, I wish I would have listened to you.
Yeah. Understood.
One particular person, I said, well, what could I have done differently to make you listen? And that person was like, well, there really wasn't anything you could do. It was something I had to learn on my own. I'm like,
right.
oh, okay. So that you can't help everyone, but
true, understood.
It's in my heart to want to help people.
Right, for sure.
Because I've been kind of quasi-burned. It turned out it was a 1.1x, so it wasn't horrendous, but we could have put it somewhere else and it would have done better. But
right.
I still feel burned, and it hurts me to know that there's other people out there that I tried to help that didn't listen, and now they're getting it too.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you keep hitting, right? I think I've been burned. I've kind of come up with the same deal. My first, bad real estate deal was trusting the wrong individual, lost a lot of money in that. But for that reason, I definitely vet more now than I did. Like, there were legal cases there too that it wasn't until after the fact that I'm like, I found all of the things. So I definitely I think that's the beauty of having your network and meeting people in the space and having a very diversified, is because you start getting an understanding of, okay, how does this person's reputation, and if you have enough people who know about them and have a reputation, you can find out information. So that's one avenue, but also Google, and trying to find, and it's funny that you don't necessarily do it. You look at everybody's socials, but you're not looking for like the legal cases, right? So that's good.
When some people forget what they put on Facebook. And so if now they're Mr. or Mrs. real estate professional, and now they have their LinkedIn, profile over here, but they forgot what they put on Facebook because maybe they're not on Facebook anymore.
Right.
And so you can do some comparison shopping between the two and look for discrepancies and be like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then you I start connecting dots. If someone says that, someone says they're a pilot, well, I have a friend that is a pilot, and he's going to look up licenses for me. Yeah. And he showed me where to look them up. Yeah. So, don't tell me you're something if you're not.
Yep.
And I've tried really hard to find those documents. Like, if someone, trying to think of another one that we had, it's really, I've saved people money. I had a friend text me one time and say, hey, do you know this person? And I was like, oh yes, run. Well, I wound up saving him somewhere between $10 and $15 million on that.
Oof.
And so he's one of the ones that if I don't know somebody, I ask him. If he doesn't know someone, he asks me.
That's good.
And then we've got other people we can reach out to as well. But honestly, I would say it's a group of maybe 5 to 10 of us that really work together to recon.
That's awesome. I love that.
I would say that for somebody new too. You don't look green by not doing the recon behind the person.
Yeah.
See, when we were first getting involved, I thought that by asking too many questions, it showed how green I was. And it showed how new I was. And I didn't want to look like a newbie.
Yeah.
But now that we've been in the space for 5 years, oh my God.
Yeah.
Everybody checks on everybody, and we all talk. This is a very small world.
For sure. Absolutely. That's very good, because I do believe that people who are first timers, they think, oh, well, I don't want people to identify that I'm new in this space. So the less I ask, maybe I can just sneak under the radar and I know what I'm. Yeah, definitely ask the questions.
Yeah, there was a guy today at the meetup.
Than those surface questions.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a guy at the meetup today that he was like, well, I'm a newbie and I hope y'all don't mind me asking all these questions. And he said it like 4 times. I'm like, dude, stop.
Yeah.
You don't have to qualify. Yeah. Just ask your questions. We've all been there.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh man, thank you. But it was just really funny because you feel like you're showing the whole world you're a newbie when you're asking all these questions, but really you're just helping yourself learn.
Right. And helping others, because a lot of people don't want to ask the questions, right? They're like, oh, that was a good question that you asked. I'm a question asker, so people might get annoyed by that. So I know this is the end, but I want to give you an opportunity to just point people towards both of your programs, the REI Rocks and Summit, and also the underwriting. So let people know just how you guys are able to get a hold of you.
Probably the easiest way is on our Mighty Networks platform. So we have a community there, and it's just theacademypresents.mn.co.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got my underwriting there. We have a mastermind that we do every year there. Basically, everything we do is funneled through that one community. So
Awesome.
And I'm putting it in the chat, so if you want to put it on the show
Yeah, I'll put it
notes
in
and
definitely
everything.
put it in the episode.
Yeah,
So
I don't know why it's capitalized, but anyway.
no worries. Well, thank you guys for joining today. I appreciate your time and all your nuggets. I definitely think there's things that our audience will definitely take away. Thank you guys for joining us. Until next time, stay blessed.
Bye, guys.
bye.